Welcome back, everybody, to your favorite Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. We hope you guys are doing well and recovering because the Indiana Pacers put us through misery on this Friday night. Me and Facci are here to talk about it as the Pacers lose 124 to 111. Facci, there's a lot of ways we can go with this game, but it's just honestly, you have to be incredibly disappointed with the first five and how they came out so flat in the second half and just got completely embarrassed.
I think this is the worst the starters have played collectively. You can make an argument that they got blown out earlier in the year against the Knicks. Sure, all right, that's a New York Knicks team with a lot of aspirations. This is a Miami Heat team without Jimmy Butler, and this is the in-season tournament. You're supposed to get up for this game, and I felt like the starters never had it going. You could say the first quarter, sure, they led by three. After that, the final three quarters of this game, it was all Miami. And yeah, the bench, they had their moments to try and you know, make the game doable, cut it within, 10-point deficit. But for the starters, to me, this kind of felt like rock bottom.
It really did. I mean, I thought honestly, like the first quarter, it felt okay, right? Indiana's up 29-26. Tyrese Halliburton's coming out, really looking for a shot aggressively in that first half. And I don't know what his numbers were after one, but I do know that he ended up the game being like 50% shooting from the field, 40 something percent from three. Like, I know the stats probably look better than what they are. I'm not saying he had a good game. I'm just saying statistically, they didn't look bad on paper. But I felt like first quarter looked good. And then that second quarter is just like Miami just completely outplayed them. They outscore them 35-26. Tyrese did have a bucket at the end of the half to cut it to six. You have a little momentum potentially going into the half, only trailing by six. And then Kevin Love. What in the world happened? I mean, the guy only plays what, like 12 minutes in this game? He plays 12 minutes in this game and goes 6 of 8 from the field, 15 points. I mean, I knew it was bad when Ben Mathurin and Miles Turner are trying to run a action up top, and Mathurin throws a pass to Turner, and Turner doesn't have Love sealed off. Love steals the basketball, goes coast to coast, and scores after he had just hit a three or two. And the Pacers call timeout, and here's Kevin Love walking back to the bench, and the whole entire Miami Heat bench is just, mobbing him because they're like, okay, Kevin Love, 2016 is back. So it was just really embarrassing. You bring the bench in the third quarter. They cut the lead to 13 after the Pacers had gotten outscored 20-9 in the first like 5-ish minutes with their starters out there in the third quarter. Rick Carlisle goes back to the starters in the fourth, and then they just completely laid an egg once again. Your best starter in the plus minus tonight was Ben Shepherd, who was a minus 22. So it just everything went bad pretty much after the first quarter. It was completely embarrassing.
It really was. I mean, your point on Kevin Love, he had 15 points. All 15 of them came in the third quarter. You mentioned 12 minutes. I mean, that is nothing for a starter. That's crazy. But absolutely torched the Pacers in that third quarter. Bam Adebayo is another guy who absolutely had his way with Indiana. He had 3 points at halftime. He had 27 points in the second half.
Let me just read this real quick to you.
What do
Okay.
you got?
30 points, 11 rebounds, and 7 assists was his stat line at the end of the
Yep.
game. Siakam and Turner combined 23 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. Bam Adebayo outplayed both Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam in this game alone, and that doesn't even include what Kevin Love did in 12 minutes.
No, it's true. I mean, even seeing Bam hit threes, I felt like it was like the shots that Miami was putting up, specifically in the second half. I felt like Indiana wasn't even contesting them. These felt like wide open shots. I mean, Kevin Love was 3 of 4 from three. Haywood Highsmith 2 of 2 from three. Bam Adebayo 2 of 3. It just felt like those guys were just stroking the three ball in this game. And then for Turner, I mean, this is another game. This is the second game in a row where Turner started off early, 6 points, first quarter, finishes the game with 3 points in the remaining three quarters. That's back-to-back games that has happened where Turner scored 3 points in the final three quarters. Now, this isn't a Indiana lost this game because of Miles Turner's situation. This is simply just the starters did not play well at all. I mean, Rick talked about it after the game. This was just a poor effort by the team. The fans were booing numerous times at home in an in-season tournament game. I mean, we just expected, based off of the magic that the Pacers had last year in the in-season tournament, they would get up and play in this game. And I'm not going to lie, with no Jimmy Butler, I felt like this was a win for the Pacers. They were by the Vegas betting lines, they were favored in this game by a few points. Like this was a game that you thought Indiana would respond coming off of that rough loss to Orlando. And right now, it doesn't even matter who a team is without. There's no one that I'm looking past at this point saying Indiana's got this one because they continue to prove us wrong, whether it's a hurt Pelicans team, a hurt Philadelphia team, a hurt Orlando team, or a hurt Miami team. It doesn't matter. Those teams are finding ways to win and come together while the Pacers are finding ways to lose.
This is just not a good team right now, Facci, and I hate to say it, but they don't have any identity, right? Last year, I know they were terrible on defense, but at least they were great offensively, and everybody knew this is a great offensive team. Right now, before tonight's game, they were 16th in offensive rating, which is below,
Mediocre.
it's below the middle, but it's right in the middle, right? Because 15 would be right in the middle, 16 is right below that. So, um, to me, it's just they don't have an identity, and I think that they're really struggling trying to figure things out. And I do think that part of it is because of the injuries. You're not having that cohesion, but even that group wasn't playing good to start the year, right? So I think honestly, it starts with the top, and it's Tyrese Halliburton. He does so much for this team. He is the engine to the car. And when the engine's not running, the car can't perform at its highest level, right? And we've had some great play from Benedict Mathurin all season long. I think Pascal Siakam has been pretty consistent, but at this point, both those guys didn't play well in this game tonight. And it kind of shows you like, man, had they not been playing well for the majority of the season so far, how bad could this really be? So I put a question out on Twitter because I was curious what fans had to say. I've got 100 comments right now, Facci, from
Uh,
people. I know there's a lot of people migrating away from Twitter, but I said, what's your biggest concern with the Pacers? And the common, trend here is Miles Turner. A lot of people are upset with Miles Turner. This is Sharon Elliott, longtime listener of the show and podcast follower here and follower on Twitter. He said, Miles Turner and the defense as a whole. Ricky Kelly says, the effort and urgency from this team is lacking. Don't see the love of the game like we did last year. Tyler Christian said, defense and rebounding remain largely inconsistent. Miles is playing himself out of this team's future at this rate. Mikey O said Miles Turner not being effective in any aspect of the game, and we just don't look like we are enjoying things anymore. So it's a lot of people like throwing in different things, but they're adding Miles Turner to it. So it's been rough, right? Miles has had some rough stretches this year. And like I said, it starts with Halliburton because last year, Halliburton's excellence led to Miles Turner, you know, uh, ascension, right? Like we saw Miles Turner become somebody that was even in consideration, not really, but kind of for an all-star bid. But now he's regressed to the means. He's guarding Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo hits a three. The next play, he's like playing drop at the free throw line, and Bam just walks right into a three again. It's just like I'm not getting on to him entirely for this loss, but he has regressed, and he's going to figure things out. His best games this season have only come when Tyrese Halliburton's played great.
yeah.
And he needs
Sure.
to figure out how to be better when Tyrese isn't always playing great.
No, it's true. We're looking for like it doesn't need to be a Turner takeover type game, but like yeah, Turner's played well when everything's going right. But sometimes you need just other guys to step up. And I just think that I did the math right now. Turner has 13 rebounds in his last 3 games. We asked coming into this game. I mean, not coming into this game, coming into the season. Could he average 8, 9, 10 felt like a stretch from a rebounding standpoint. 13 in your last 3, it's unacceptable. Not the same defender that he was before. And this is a contract year. This is where you're expected to take the leap. And when you see what centers are getting paid right now, $30 million, I'm sorry, I can't write that check. And it's not like it's coming out of my pocket, but I'm just saying that's a little bit of a scary check knowing that this is a team that ran it back. The only thing worse than running it back is giving everybody raises and running it back, and we already kind of did that. So it's a little bit troublesome. But going back to your point before with Tyrese Halliburton. Halliburton, yeah, you look on paper, it does look like, oh, hey, 18 points. He had 16 in the first half. He had 2 shots in the second half. That's not enough. I mean, the same thing that you credited Halliburton for early on, he had 8 points on 7 shots in the first quarter. He just sort of after that just kind of disappeared. And
For
when
sure.
you look at this for the game, Tyrese Halliburton had 8 assists. Sorry, but he had that in the first quarter of the last game. And it just felt like this is just a game that started out well for him, and all of the starters essentially just kind of vanished. I mean, Pascal
Mhm.
Siakam, 14 points, 10 of them came in the second quarter. Second half, just four. It's not enough.
No, Pascal was really bad in this game tonight. And I'm not trying to say Tyrese played great at all. I was not saying that. So if
No one did.
anybody's misunderstanding that, that is not what I was saying. I said they had a good first quarter, and I thought he looked good aggressively. Was being aggressive, looking for a shot, and that's what you want to
Yes.
see. Like that's what a lot of people have said. Like, how is this guy not getting more points, right? So if he has, this stat line against the Magic, they win that game. So
Yes, absolutely.
that's kind of what I was trying to get at. But what I'm trying to say is like Halliburton was pretty much bad after the first quarter, and had maybe a few stretches there at the end of the second quarter, but everybody else was kind of playing bad with the starters. Like Pascal Siakam, I was like, man, I can't believe he got 10 points in that second quarter because it was kind of quiet. You didn't really feel it. And I was like, okay, maybe they need to feed him a little bit more, get him going because he had Kevin Love on him to start the game. Like if he's got Kevin Love on him, you have to win that matchup, and he didn't. So to me, that was a little bit frustrating because Kevin Love in 12 minutes had more points than Pascal Siakam had at almost 30. And Kevin Love is a solid basketball player at this point in his career, but like he is
Yeah.
nothing close to what you're wanting Pascal Siakam to be for this team. So that is to me like Pascal defensively, like we haven't really touched on the defense yet, and I think that's where the big problems are, right? The Pacers got absolutely obliterated in the first quarter in transition defense, and that carried over throughout the entirety of the game. Indiana was hitting their threes early on. They were shooting like 40 something percent in the first half, and Miami wasn't hitting. Second half starts, Indiana can't buy from outside, and Miami is hitting everything. So it was just a lot of bad defense, a lot of allowing guys to get into the paint, and there was no resistance. And I think that's where people are frustrated with Miles Turner because he's supposed to be this rim protector, shot blocker, enforcer down low, and he just isn't that anymore. And then when you pull him out of the game, you don't have anybody else to throw down there because of all the injuries. Playing Obi Toppin at the five is not a long term solution. We've talked about that. And I'm not giving anybody an excuse. I'm just saying, like, these are the reasons why this team has been so bad. And like watching them play defense in the half court was absolutely dreadful, right? I mean, there was the play in the fourth quarter, right, when Pascal Siakam just completely loses his man, runs to the basket to box out, and Tyrese is looking at him like, dude, you just left him wide open. I don't know how many times I saw Miami hit wide open,
Too
uncontested
many.
threes because of the poor defense. So there's a lot of things to be upset about with this game, and I think it all has to come down to effort and execution. Rick Carlisle wants to take the blame, right? Okay, that's fine. I don't mind it, but the players have to be held accountable at some point. And Tyrese Halliburton is a leader of this team. It's time to start leading on both ends of the court.
It's true. In the post game conference, I mean, Carlisle said, "Yeah, hey, I'll take the blame. I didn't have the players ready to play." He was ashamed. Okay, but we've now heard that Rick's been mad for, I don't know, a month and a half. Like at some point, when does that become like when does it translate into sending that message? Like this is a team that desperately needs to look in the mirror. Like it felt like last year we didn't have anywhere near the same expectations. I'll definitely say that. It felt like you could go and each game could be its own. But this Pacers team looked worse this year than it did last year. And I felt like last year, we were trying to figure things out. This year, it's like, hey, our strength is supposed to be chemistry. It was continuity. I mean, you brought back the same roster. Even if you have some injuries, other teams are dealing with worse injuries right now. Like I mentioned, Jimmy Butler didn't play in this game, and Miami wins by 13. They led by as many as 22. I mean, this should not be happening. And I just feel like this was one of those games that when the bench came in the third quarter, it was like that was the best that Indiana looked all game when a 22 point deficit became like a 10 point deficit. And it's like you don't want it to have to be, hey, wow, Quenton Jackson's really, playing his butt off right now. Whoa, Obi Toppin looks good, and look at it. It's like that's not what it's supposed to be. Like you give the reserves credit. Hey, like you guys definitely brought some energy and things like that. But the starters were just downright awful, and they did deserve to be benched because I felt like there was nothing, there was no life from them tonight. And at that point, I think they needed to be able to watch and really have it soak in.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder how much watching is going to really help. I mean, I thought it might in the third quarter, and they come back out in the fourth and have a little bit of fire in them, but they just played worse.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like they were just like sulking instead of playing through it. And there's been games like it's just one game to a certain degree, but like you go back and I was talking with Pat Boylan yesterday, and I said, is it fair to say that Pascal Siakam is to the Pacers of 2024 what David West was to the Pacers of 2012, 2013? And he said, I think it's a great comparison. However, the one thing he said was David West was more of a leader naturally
Absolutely.
than Pascal Siakam. And I think that that is like hitting the nail on the head, right? Is that right? How you say that? The head on the nail? I
Yep.
forget.
Oh, you
Whatever,
got it.
but the nail on the head. Okay, whatever. It's late. I'm messing up with my analogies here, but it's just so true because Pascal Siakam is a pretty quiet guy by nature, and Tyrese Halliburton. Like one thing I respect about Tyrese is, when you're the face of the franchise, you have to deal with the great and the awful. And almost every time the Pacers lose a bad game, he has to go to the post game press conference and talk about it. So, it's one of those things where it's like you feel bad to a certain degree that he always has to do it, but he's a good leader. I think that we've seen that throughout his tenure here, but it's still pretty young, right? He's still pretty young. And I think sometimes they need more of a veteran presence out there on the court. Miles Turner to me is not a natural leader. I think he's more of a guy that just kind of fits into what his role is. He's become more vocal. We've heard that, but this is when you need guys like Miles and Pascal to step up and Tyrese too. Like these guys all have to step up as the leaders of this team and say, what are we doing? We got to get this crap figured out. And Rick Carlisle, his coaching staff, like they have done a good job last season getting this team to where they got to. This year, it's been a lot of ups and downs. And I know people want to point the finger at Carlisle and say it's the defense, but I think more of the problem is not the defensive scheme, it's the defensive personnel. This is a team built to play great offense, and they're not doing that. And that's why I said early on, the offensive identity is completely lost. And if they can't get back to being a top five offense, then this is a 500 ball club. So if they want to be elite and they want to be potentially, Eastern Conference Finals contenders again, they're going to have to find that offensive, firepower that they had last year and replicate what they did last year offensively by outscoring teams. They can't rely on, out hustling teams because that's not who they are, or out defending teams. They're not going to do that. So if they're scoring at a low clip, they're going to lose a lot of games.
No, it's spot on. I mean, if you told me the Pacers would be the fifth best offense in the league, I'd be like, oh man, that's it's taking a step back. You're telling me the 16th best offense in the league right now. I mean, that is just downright unacceptable for a team that we know is not this stellar offensive group. And I think that right now, this is it's one thing if you're going to muck it up with Orlando Magic and play a game where it's like, okay, hey, you know what, that's fine. But now it's just, you just like you said earlier, no identity at all. They're stuck right in the middle. And I think that we're not forcing teams to play our style like we did last year. Like last year was one thing where it's like, hey, you're gonna play Indiana, you're gonna run up and down. It's gonna be a shootout. You're gonna score 120 plus points, and it's gonna be the team that is in the best shape and in the best cardio is gonna win.
Mhm.
And now the Pacers never look like they're really in control, being comfortable, playing their style of ball, and it shows. It shows right now, and I just think that right now they have some problems. They really do. The bench isn't going to be able to be what it is if it's this thin. I feel like the starters have just not had that. They've not gelled like they did last year, and I'm starting to get a little bit worried. We're 12 games in. I know it's still early. Like yes, Indiana could definitely win two straight, and all of a sudden they're back to 500 when the rest of the East is not at that point, but when are they going to click? What is it going to take? I really don't know. But I feel like it's not even about getting it for the big games anymore. Like, is this not a big game? To me, this is. This is you're at home. The in-season tournament against a team like Miami. I don't care if Miami underperformed last year. That's a team that you look at as one of the upper tier teams in the NBA based off of what they've done the last few years. A couple trips to the NBA Finals. And tonight, that's not an excuse. We don't have the people thought you and I maybe let Tyrese off the hook a little bit early, last game against Orlando Magic. No one's off the hook. This team needs to dig deeper and figure it out as to what type of basketball team you are. And through 12 games and through the preseason, we have never been able to pinpoint and said that is what we do very well this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. And I will say this, like the criticism was fair, right? Because I was pretty passive on Tyrese last game and just kind of said, well, Orlando's a tough matchup. And I was talking to Chris Neri about it before the game tonight, and he said, "Look, Ty's struggled with Orlando going back to last year. It's just
Yeah,
they do a good job defending him, but it doesn't mean you can make it an excuse." So if I was a little bit, not hard enough on Tyrese the last game, then I don't mind the criticism, right, from the fan base saying, I got to hold Ty to a higher standard, right, and hold him more accountable. He is the franchise guy. So I know that with 82 games, you're going to have stinkers, and it's good not to overreact, but he has had too many in 12 games, and I
way too
think
many.
that's the problem, right? So is it 12 games or 14 games right now? Are they 5-7?
Well, they're 5-7.
Okay. I was thinking 6-8 for a second, but I knew they were 2 games under 500. But it's just one of those things, Facci. When I look at this game, like I thought this team was going to get up for this game
So did I.
because of how they treated the in-season tournament last year. It's the NBA Cup now. You have a great opportunity, super cool court. The fan base, like they wanted to cheer, like they were
Court
ready
was
to
cool.
explode. You like the court?
I did, and like I always wanted to take it with a lens of like I'm not a guy that does well with change. I'm gonna be honest, I really don't. Last year I thought the court was a little bit too bright, then it really grew on me. This year I thought it was the right shade of blue. I felt like it wasn't too much like whoa, what is that? I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I just thought the players would respond, and unfortunately they did not.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, it's like it's kind of embarrassing, and no, it's not kind of. It's definitely embarrassing that
It
Quenton
is. It is.
Jackson has to come in and be the guy that plays with the most heart and hustle. Like,
Yeah,
like the way that he was, getting chippy with Tyler Hero at the end of the game when the game was pretty much over.
had a
He
great
kind of
block
like
too.
ran by Duncan Robinson, like, and just shouldered him a little bit. Tyler Hero took exception to that and kind of got in his face. And Quentin Jackson's like, screw you, dude. I don't care. And I like that chippiness. I like that edginess to him. He had that block shot at the end of the third quarter
It
to
was a
save
great
a
block.
layup after it was a terrible play. I mean, Jarris Walker had 7 turnovers in this game, but some of those passes were bad, but he was still doing some really good things on the other side of the basketball, stealing the basketball, had his hands everywhere. Like he was trying to make the right passes. Sometimes I think he forced a little bit too much, and I'm not gonna like over criticize his game, but I will just say this: I felt like Quentin Jackson really brought an extra
Totally.
level of hustle, Facci, in this game. So to me, I have to give him a lot of praise because if the Pacers had played like this with their starting group, then they would have completely won this game by 20 points. But the fact is,
Okay.
they came out so flat, not connected at all, and they were sloppy with the basketball, 20 turnovers. They only were in the game for stretches because they shot the three ball well. The offense was not connected whatsoever. Too much one-on-one hero ball at times. And then the defense was absolutely putrid throughout the entirety of the game. The best defense we saw was from the bench. And the bench unit does not have a lot of great defenders, but I would say, based on how the starters have played, they probably have even worse defenders individually with who's out there. So it's it's just a matter of, okay, now it's time to put your money where your mouth is, Tyrese. It's time for you to put your money where your mouth is, Pascal Siakam. You guys got to lead this team, and that's what they have to do to continue to get out of this hole that they're digging themselves in right now, because 2 games under 500 after 12 games, not the end of the world, but it's not a good place to be.
No, it's not, and I just think that yeah, the expectations have changed. We thought that this was a team that would be able to hit the ground running early on, and to be honest, we knew the schedule was tough, but they've wasted a big opportunity because when you look at where the rest of the Eastern Conference is at, what if Indiana had just been 2 games above 500? All of a sudden, it's like wow, look around, you got to feel pretty good about this, but now it's like other teams will catch up to the Pacers, and soon enough they'll find themselves just in that spot where you lose a game, now you're in play-in territory, or you're out of the picture, anything like that. But 20 turnovers tonight for the Pacers, just sloppy game. Miami shoots 12 more free throws than Indiana. I just felt like overall there's just nothing. There was really no moments to take home and hold your hat on. I think the one moment that was good that you mentioned was that Quenton Jackson block at the end of the third quarter. That was probably the only moment in
I
the
mean,
second half
Obi
that
Toppin's run there in the third
yes,
quarter where he had
Obi
like eight
Toppin in the
points in a
third
row.
quarter. He had a great third quarter, and I think even in the second half, he had a really good second half. He scored like 14 of his 21 in the second half. I felt like he was the bright spot, but it was just tough. It was honestly tough to watch, and I found myself being like, man, this was one of those games. I'm gonna be honest. I was like, man, I gotta record after this, like. Because it's just like this stinks. You want to talk about the wins, but the wins have been a little bit hard to come by, and I think that this is a good opportunity for Indiana to once again play Miami this weekend, this Sunday, on my birthday. Can they get revenge for me? Please. It would mean something if I could get the pep back in the step and go into work the next on Monday being, hey, I just had my birthday. The Pacers won. Life is good. I don't want to lose back-to-back games against Miami and have the losing streak go to 3 games when you factor in Orlando. At that point, I'm just going to feel like an old man rooting for a losing team.
Yeah, and I think if you're interested, Pacer fans in the NBA Cup, I mean, I'm not too worried about this right now this year. I'm more worried about the Pacers playing basketball the right way.
Yeah, me too.
So it's kind of been put on the back burner. But Pep and the Step will be good if they can win, and their new City Edition uniforms on Sunday. They'll have the City Edition court. Maybe that is what they need to put out there to kind of revive those moments from last year, because that was pretty much the NBA Cup court without it being the bright teal was their secondary one. They love that, but they love those jerseys. So maybe that can kind of help carry over some of that magic. I mean, we're looking for anything at this point. We're grasping for straws, but I'll just say this: like the NBA Cup, I wouldn't say that the Pacers are completely out of it because they lost this game, right? I think it's a weird dynamic because it is based on point differential, and that is why you saw the likes of Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo trying to close this game out because they were trying to build up their plus point differential. Now, look, they lost in overtime because of Eric Spoelstra calling that timeout and the technical foul, that whole thing, right? So, interestingly enough, those points that they lost by do not count as a negative to them. If any game goes into overtime in the NBA Cup games, the
Mm.
point differential is at 0. So that is an interesting fact for those games. However, the Detroit Pistons are now 2-0 in Cup games. They beat Miami and they beat Toronto. Now they still got Milwaukee and Indiana to play, but that's going to be difficult, with the way the Pistons have been playing. I think they could win that game. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I'm not sure how many games. I think Toronto is now 0-2. I think Milwaukee beat them earlier this week. And then they lost, of course, tonight to the Pistons. Now Miami is 1-1. The Pacers are 0-1. So Indiana could still go 3-1, potentially, outscore their opponents, get the positive plus minus back up. But if a team goes 4-0, they have no chance of getting there. But you gotta beat Detroit, which I think is doable. Detroit is not that good, but the Pacers just haven't been playing well. And I was just hoping that this NBA Cup would really be helping them kind of take that next step to get over the hump they've been in, that little back and forth. So anyway, quickly, Facci, as we wrap it up here, I know I wanted to give the NBA Cup update, but do we want to give out player awards tonight? I think there are some players that are deserving off the
Can.
bench, but that's about it.
Yeah, we can for the Mel Daniels MVP. I'm going Obi Toppin. I felt like he really had arguably his best game of the season. I felt like he had a really strong second half. So I'm definitely going Obi Toppin for my MVP. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Obi at this point. Like 21 points on the team and scoring off the bench. Had that great stretch in the third quarter to kind of get the Pacers with that fake run back into it. It was good to see him kind of get going offensively because I think he needs that. He's been kind of hit or miss since he returned from his ankle injury. So that was big to me. I don't think there's really any clutch player of the game tonight, but I will say there was a clutch moment, and that was Johnny Furphy blocking Tyler Hero at the end of the game when Tyler Hero was trying to put the points up even more. I mean, that could have went from 15, points,
Yeah.
point differential for the Pacers. So he saves him an extra 2 points, and Tyler Hero ended up hurting his hand on the play. So
Oh,
we'll see if how serious that is. I don't think it'll be super serious, but it looked like he jammed his hand. And then I would say for our feisty Foster hustle player of the game, might be back to back, but
I think so.
Quenton Jackson.
I'm going Quenton Jackson. The
Well, he didn't
block.
get it in the Magic game, right?
No, he got it in the next game.
Knicks game.
But still, he 2 of the last 3 games, and I feel like that block was just like great hustle. Really, he had to put every single thing he had into getting that block, and you could just see Quentin Jackson knows like, hey, my minutes might be really inconsistent. I might not get minutes at all. Well, when I do, I better make him count because he's been the fringe NBA player where you're on that 2-way contract, but it's like you could be G League, you could be NBA. Like, are you really going to be able to lock down a spot? And I feel like he's made the most of his minutes the last couple games.
Yeah, he's kind of been like that junkyard dog, right?
Yep.
For the Pacers. Like you put him in the game and he's just gonna muck it up and he's gonna go out there and scrap and fight and claw, and that's what you want from a guy like Quentin Jackson with where he's at as a two-way guy. So I'm glad that the Pacers gave him that opportunity because at first Johnny Furphy got those minutes, And then Rick Carlisle was like, no, that wasn't a good run from Furphy in the third quarter. So he puts in Quenton Jackson. Quenton Jackson didn't change the game, but he definitely brought a much needed energy that this team was lacking. Thought TJ McConnell had a good game as well off the bench. Good to see him kind of get back to his self a little bit with how this team has needed him, right? And so they need him even more now with all the injuries they have. So not making excuses. Miami was without Jimmy Butler. You got to win this game. Should have won this game. I expected them to win this game. This loss, as Rick Carlisle said, is embarrassing multiple times. And he said the fans rightly booed them twice, and they deserve to be booed for their play. So, really for the starters, top to bottom, I would say they'll all probably get Fs if I were to give them a grade. Got to be better. I hope they bounce back against Miami on Sunday, but it's your birthday. I'm not counting on anything with this Pacers team at this point. They're too inconsistent, and they're not playing good enough basketball for me to feel good about it.
A couple years ago, I watched the Pacers lose on my birthday, and it was when Detroit was just absolutely horrific and ended up picking like Cade Cunningham in the draft. So I have no full on hope or over expectation that we will definitely win this game. I would just it would be nice to celebrate, have that be the icing on the cake a little bit for the birthday. But hey, I think we've talked enough about this L. I think it's time to be able to move on. I think that it helps to play a team twice in a short span because you can see if you can make those adjustments. If Indiana cannot make the adjustments against the same team that they just played, it's definitely a reason for concern.
Absolutely right, Facci. So we're going to wrap it up here. I'll be back on Sunday to recap that game against the Heat. Of course, Facci will not be joining us because it's his birthday. He's got some birthday plans with the family. So me and Facci will have to get back together after the birthday. I don't even know what the next game is after this. I've been so focused on just this weekend. I know they play Milwaukee next Friday, and other than that, I really don't know the rest of the schedule. So, but we'll be back for some more game recaps, some more Pacers conversations as we continue to figure out what is going on with this team. But hopefully, we start to see this team find its identity in the next matchup against Miami and build off that, because I think each game they can win is a great opportunity to use as a building block because they desperately need to climb out of this hole that they're in. So, anything else you want to add, Foch?
Nope, it's Toronto is the game that we'll recap together when we get back. But other than that, I think it's time to put this one to rest.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode here of your Go-To Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. We hope you guys liked how we went back to the old format here on the video because we've been doing the one screen, but tonight I forgot to change it back over to the one screen. So you got the double screen with me and Facci in the camera the whole time. So if you like this version better, let me know. I can work with it. But if you like the one version better or the one video, better, let me know on that in the comment section below on YouTube. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And just a reminder for all of our RU football fans out there, still undefeated, moved up in the rankings. They don't play again until the 24th, I believe it is. Maybe it's the 23rd against Ohio State. So, just enjoy it while you can because you're still undefeated. And hey, good week to prepare for Ohio State. But with that being said, Facci, if you're up with the Pacers, bounce back with a win against the Heat on Sunday. Hit me with those three words.
Let's go, Pacers.